there, my fellow skeptics and believers and everyone in between. Welcome back to another episode of Ghosts in the Machine. I am on the road again because this is part of an investigation series. Because I like putting different subtitles at the beginning of my videos. So this is part of the investigation series, and I am on my way to Hartford City, Indiana, because I'm going to stay at a house called the Monroe house, which is ironically on Monroe Street, because I guess that's where it got its name. This is supposed to be the most haunted house in Indiana. That's what many ghost hunters bill it as, and many websites and YouTube channels and stuff like that. They call it the most haunted house in Indiana. They also nickname it the Demon House. I don't know why. Apparently there's like an evil thing, but then there's other ghosts, and there's an abusive ghost, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going at the invitation of my friend Joe Vitale, who is a ghost hunter, well, more like a paranormal investigator kind of thing, but he's an investigator, and he's more leaning towards the side of skepticism with a lot of these things, but he still has a belief in the afterlife and stuff like that. So this is the one place, I think, according to him, this is like the one place out of every place that he's gone to that has had weird things happen, that he just thinks maybe, if any place, this was one that's haunted. So he invited me along, and that's where I'm going. A 7-hour drive, because I like to drive and I like to stop at some places. Yeah, that's me at the A Christmas Story house from the movie. That's right. That was so awesome. That was so much fun. Anyway, so I'm on my way. The history, I'm probably going to insert like little clips after this whole 2 days. I'm spending 2 nights there. So when I get back home, I'll probably insert some history clips here, just going over paperwork and what I found out about certain people. But there's no real reason for this place to be haunted, I guess, according to traditional senses. There were 3 people that died in the house, but of natural causes. There is a story about an abusive relationship. There was a married couple that rented the upstairs for a while, and they went through divorce proceedings, or for the time, and I think this is in the 1940s, and I'll put it up on screen if I'm wrong, but apparently like the woman filed for divorce, which was unheard of at the time. It was usually the man that did it, but she did it because she claimed that it was an abusive relationship and that the husband was very violent and this and that, and I'll put up an article here. But then they reconciled, but a few months later, he filed for divorce, kicked her out of the apartment, like literally kicked her out onto the street and said, fend for yourself. Apparently he was fooling around with another woman who he eventually married later on. So there's that like scenario that's sometimes blamed for the violent nature of this place, but there really isn't too much. I mean, I watched a whole bunch of videos and read reports from other people, and some people claim to be scratched. Some people feel an evil presence. Some people feel that it's just they get sick or nauseated, and they also get frustrated with other people and they get bad tempers inside. I think this is all psychological. I really think people are priming themselves when they go into this. Hey there, this is future Kenny, chiming in on past Kenny's comment. I just mentioned about psychological issues and people being primed to think about the place being haunted and being scratched and seeing ghosts and stuff like that. And I just want to touch on that a little bit, because there are ways to prime someone into believing a house is haunted, either through psychological or environmental factors, and some of them I want to list here. So one, suggestion and expectation. So verbal priming. I mean, if you tell someone that a place is haunted, or it has a history of people seeing ghosts there, or bad things happen like murders or unaliving kind of stuff, or anything tragic that happened, like the abusive relationship that I mentioned earlier in the video, stuff like that primes someone to expect things are going to happen, that there's possibly evidence of the paranormal. And that goes into cultural influences, such as popular media, social media, stuff like that. Folklore reinforce these ideas, because when you hear the stories about tragic events, people think, oh, well, you know, social norms or cultural norms dictate that because something bad happened there, there's a good chance it's haunted. And that leads to flickering lights or cold spots and stuff like that. Strange noises, confirmation bias. That's another step of the priming, because once you get the idea that a place is haunted, once it's introduced to you, then you're most likely to notice weird things that you wouldn't normally notice, like a strange noise or a shadow down the end of the hall. You're not likely to notice those unless you're primed to think this place is haunted. Environmental cues are also a good way to get primed that a place is haunted. I mean, when you go to these places, especially this, like the Monroe house was dimly lit. There wasn't a lot of good lighting at all. It's unfamiliar layouts because you're confused and you get turned around easy. So that's confusing, and it sets the mood of kind of a little bit of panic because you're not sure where you're going or what direction to go in case there's an emergency or something like that. You have strange sounds, dogs barking, or you hear people outside talking that maybe you're not used to because you're not used to living in that house. Architectural features. If the inside of the house doesn't look great, if it's a fixer-upper, basically, it can evoke those feelings of this is an old, decrepit place, and it probably does have spirits because it's been left abandoned. Acoustics in that area will work weird because there's not a lot of furniture. There's usually not carpeting, so you have sounds from outside echoing, so it can really mess with your head. Another aspect of priming is the social influence. When you're in your group dynamic, when you're with friends or fellow ghost hunters or something like that, when you go into a place like this, and as soon as one person expresses fear, everyone else will jump on the bandwagon, basically. There's very few times where someone will go against the grain and say, well, no, I don't feel anything. That's usually me. I mean, they might hear something and hear a strange noise and go, what was that? You know, and everyone gets in on it like, I don't know, what was that? And since no one can find a source, it becomes this mysterious experience that they then tell future people, you know, friends and family that they meet in the future, and that reputation builds. Authority figures. A lot of ghost hunters go in as paranormal investigators. You know, they go in with a lot of equipment and they go in as an authority figure. And they give this perception that they know what they're talking about and they can certify things. And they literally like announce to the world through YouTube channels and web pages or social media like Facebook and X or Blue Sky or something like that, that place is definitely haunted. We definitely saw a ghost. And that gets out into the general populace. And our culture eats it up. So those are just a few of the ways that people can be primed that a location is haunted. And this location, the Monroe house, definitely has a whole bunch of videos about it, a whole bunch of Facebook pages or posts and web pages and stories and research done on it, on the history of it. So there's a ton out there that can prime anyone that's going to this location. Except for me, it didn't work. The only good way to get over or past that priming aspect, that influence that priming has on you, is to be aware of all these priming techniques, about how environmental cues, about social influence, about hearing stories and this and that, how it can affect your behavior towards it. And once you get a hold of that, it doesn't have such a strong effect on you. So let's get back to the video. All right, so I made it out here. I am in Hartford City, Indiana, and behind me is the Monroe house. So I'll be staying here for 2 nights, investigating some of the claims. And to be honest, there's not a lot of claims to investigate. A lot of them are subjective, very anecdotal. There's not much physical evidence to really go by, but I'm going to try anyway. I want to see what happens. There is a little thing about holy water being splashed on a door or one of the rooms or something like that, and then the house shook, so I'm going to try that. And there's a few other things that I want to look into, and hopefully you'll see it along the as we progress through this video. So there you go. Let's get started. Okay, walkthrough of the Monroe house. We come in the gate, go in the back door here. There's Joe. A ton of equipment. God damn, we look like ghost hunters. So we have a whole bunch of cameras set up so we can look at everything going on. Basement, second floor, main floor. That's my setup. This is Jeff's setup. We have more cameras to set up. There's Joe. He's the guy that invited me here. He's got a great shirt on. This is the kitchen. Is this the famous kitchen where all the drawers and everything open by themselves?
They claim that these open by themselves. They're pretty easy to open. They don't take much.
All this is open.
All the cabinet doors are open, and that's pretty amazing considering we were just in the kitchen 5 minutes ago. I'm blown away by this because this is something that physically can open these cabinet doors. I've seen this in human hauntings, I've seen this in non-human hauntings. So to me, right now, it's either something that is causing a little bit of mischief, trying to scare us, or maybe it's something that's trying to give us a message.
Or maybe the crew from the TV show did it themselves. That's definitely a possibility, and probably more likely than a ghost doing it. And I say this because when I watched that clip, and we're gonna go over this. When I watched that clip, I found two things that really stood out that told me that this was not one continuous take, and they had some time to play around. And one is called a motion blur cut. And it happens when they first hear a noise, and when they say, "Oh, that came from the kitchen." You know, there's a motion blur effect that where the camera moves really quick from one place to another, and inside that blurring motion that we see, there's a cut to a new video. Let's take a look.
Whoa! That came from the kitchen.
Oh.
Whoa!
Another thing that stands out to me is the audio track. The first two things that are said, one by Nick, one by Katrina, you hear an echo.
Do you understand me?
Whoa!
You hear the echo because the place is empty. There's not much furniture, hardwood floors, this and that. You hear an echo. But after they hear the noise, and you hear Nick say, "That came from the kitchen," there's no echo. And even when Katrina turns around and starts going into a different room, she says, "It's cold in here." There is no echo. This is a different track.
That came from the kitchen.
Oh.
So it tells me that there was a cut there too. With that cut comes time. That's time to set things up, to reposition, to go into the kitchen, open some of the doors, and then come back out and make it look like you're walking into the kitchen and finding all the doors just opened on their own. Oh, look at this. What is this? I just came out of here, and now all the cabinet doors are open. What? How did that happen? I wonder. Yeah, it was me. So basically, real simple, a quick movement when I came out back out here and was like, oh, I went like that. Yeah. And just a quick little motion blur there, and was able to stop the video, go in there, open all the doors, come back out here, do the same motion again, like that, and then just cut them back together or edit them together right where the blurring happens. So it's really easy to do. In the case of the TV show that I showed you, it wasn't so subtle. It was pretty obvious that they did a jump cut. But there you go. That's the example. Let's get back to the video. So this is a possibility. And for all the ghost hunters that are out there that are probably going to give me shit for saying, "Oh, you're accusing them of faking it." Yeah, I think that's probably what happened rather than a ghost did it itself. So we already know that Nick has a camera and he's filming during this time. And we hear the noise. Well, they hear a noise and they're like, "Oh, that came from the kitchen." But there's cuts there. Why not have one continuous filming video throughout, from the moment you hear the noise until the time that they walk into the kitchen and discover allegedly that all the doors are open themselves. And better yet, they have 2 cameras, at least 2 cameras. Nick is holding one, and they have a camera guy with a separate camera. Why not have both synced up on screen that we, the viewer, can watch so that we can see everything that's going on? I think that would be a little bit better portrayal of the investigation than all these cuts and splices where we have no idea what's going on and they have plenty of time to do whatever they want. So there's one more claim I want to address before we move on, and it has to do with the kitchen and the kitchen cabinets and water. So basically, during a return visit, a second episode of Paranormal Lockdown, which is starring the 2 people that you've already seen, Nick and Katrina, they go back to the Monroe house, and at one point they find water all over the cabinets. Like, it's dripping from the cabinets that are on the wall in the kitchen, and they find it inside. They open the doors up, they find it on the shelf and stuff. And I'll play the clip here.
Smells weird.
It smells bad in here. What does that smell?
What is that?
It's like musky, like a swamp.
Do you hear a little tap, tap, tap? Sounds like water. Oh. It's all wet over here. It's all wet.
Holy. It's all
over the cabinets. Just trying to figure out what to make of this, because there's a lot of very famous paranormal cases where liquid will form on walls. They've all been labeled demonic.
Now, given the fact that they already described the scent as musky or like a swamp, and they hear the tap, tap, tap of dripping, you would think, like, it's a water leak. There's a water leak somewhere. And to be fair, yes, they did look around, but they claim it couldn't be coming from the ceiling because they would see water damage. And even at one point, like, Nick points the camera up and he has the flashlight and he's looking up at the ceiling, and he should have seen it. I mean, I wish they would have shown his camera view of the ceiling, but they don't. Because when I was there, and granted, I'm going to acknowledge that we were there several years later after this, but when I was there and we looked up, we immediately saw what was most likely the cause. Take a look.
They also claim that, and this is a long time ago, and I highly doubt it because you can see
Water damage.
Water damage. But
Yeah.
people were claiming that, these, like, this liquid stuff pours out. And
Yeah.
made a big deal about it.
That's water damage. So I think it's safe to say that we found a logical explanation for water mysteriously showing up in these kitchen cabinets. Now, granted, I was there 6 years after the original episode of Paranormal Lockdown aired, because they were there in 2018 and I was there in 2024. So yeah, I had more time, and again, more of a leak over time left a stain in the ceiling tiles. So for us, it was pretty obvious. But what I'm saying is that this TV show, I mean, most ghost hunting TV shows are there for entertainment only, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more of a thorough investigation, because at one point, Katrina, who was one of the crew members, she says that there's no water on the upper cabinets. She's pointing to the upper cabinets.
The cabinets should be wet. The cabinets above should be wet, and they're not.
But she can't reach the upper cabinets, and we don't see them take out a ladder and actually check the upper cabinets. So, I mean, it would have been nice to get a ladder, call the owner, Eddie, and say, hey, we need a ladder, we need to check because there's a leak here, and we want to make sure that it's not going to burst a pipe and get all over the place. So that would have been nice to see. But instead, we're stuck with pretty much a fear-mongering thing where they let it go. It's mysterious water. For the rest of the episode, they don't address it. They don't come back to it. So it's just left there for other ghost hunters to see and think, oh my goodness, there's water that mysteriously shows up out of nowhere. You know, ooh, it's a spooky thing. So I think we're done with that, and we're going to move on to, well, we're going to move out of the kitchen and go experiment with some holy water, because apparently that pisses off demons. Let's go look.
All right, so I have holy water, which I don't normally use in anything because I try to stay really objective.
I'm sorry, what? Objective? I don't think that's the word you're looking for. Objective means that when it comes to your judgment, that you're not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and presenting the facts. We don't see any objectivity in these episodes. So the 2 episodes that we've pulled from Paranormal Lockdown in order to explore some of the claims that they made about the house we're investigating, I see no objectivity. I think the word that you're looking for is subjective. That's when you are influenced and you based your judgment on your personal feelings and taste and opinions. I think that's what you're looking for, because it's pretty mandatory for ghost hunting shows to be subjective. I mean, if they were objective, they would probably be more like this video. Damn! Just saying.
Does this bother you at all?
Holy.
That house just
When you were throwing the holy water against the wall, it just got angry and this house came alive.
right here, and then I heard those windows shake. It felt like the house was just picked up and dropped.
All right, so the basic idea behind why they did that scene was because there's so many rumors that the place is infested with a demon, not just ghosts, but a demon. So that if you have something that's blessed, say like holy water, and you throw it around to different places on the doors and the walls and stuff like that, that you'll get a reaction because, you know, demons don't like holy water. So that's what they do, and that's why they did that scene. The reaction that they get is claiming that the house felt like it came alive, that it became angry, and that it was picked up and dropped. We don't see any evidence of that. We really don't. There's nothing visual except for Nick's kind of sloppy handling of the camera, which is just moving it back and forth. We don't see any evidence that the house was picked up and dropped. Nobody falls over. Nobody goes, off balance into a wall or something. We do see the camera guy come through a doorway and holding the door. He kind of hits the door and holds it, but I'll get to that in a second. What we do hear is some kind of noise, which according to Katrina in the show, she claims that it's one of the windows, this window, that's rattling. And we don't really know that. We don't know that for sure because, they are mic'd. Katrina and Nick is mic'd. I don't think the camera guy is mic'd. But even if there's a microphone on the camera, it's pointed towards them, as we can see from the footage. So I don't know where that noise is coming from. It could be from different rooms. And if it is coming from the window, there's other causes for that. There could be a truck going along the road that's right next to that room. If you look at this map, you can see that that bedroom where that window is that they claim shook is right on the corner of the property. And it's only about 40 feet off the road. So if there is a truck or a heavy car or something that goes through there, it could make it rattle. Also, wind. Wind can do this. If there's a gust of wind, it could cause the window to rattle. So none of these alternative and more plausible explanations were explored in this show. It basically just accepted right from the start that it was because the holy water was thrown on the walls and it must be a demon. There must be a reaction. Therefore, supernatural. All right, so real quick, I want to show you some creative editing during this alleged experience. Okay, so over here, we have a 360-degree photograph of the room that we're talking about, the blue room. That's where we are, okay? And you can see that there's a doorway on the left side, a doorway on the right side, which opens into the room. So the right side doorway opens into the room, the actual door opens into the room, and the left side door opens into the bedroom. So it opens out of the blue room. And then we can see over here, this is the wall, that's the opposite wall. So that's opposite of the doorways here, all right, on the opposite side. And when we look at the top here, this is the clip from the show, and we can see right from the start, we see the camera guy is standing in front of the left side door, okay, and Katrina's she's in front of the right side door, and she's throwing holy water. And then when the camera shifts from Nick's camera to the camera guy's view, we can see that Katrina's still there, she takes a step over to the left side door. The camera guy is backing up. All right, so now he's not in front of the left door, but he's more to the left of the left side door. Katrina's in front of the left door, and we see that Nick is in the back of the room. He's back by this podium that's in the 360 photograph. But in the very next... Oh, wait. So Nick's camera, at the end of the shot, is pointing directly at Katrina and the camera guy. All right? Directly at them. So if we cut to his view in the timeline here, we should see Katrina and the camera guy. We should see that, right? But we don't. What we see is a view of the ceiling, because why not? And when it comes down, when the camera's brought down, we see camera guy is actually coming through the right side door. So he teleported. Magically, he teleported from left of the left side door to coming through into the room of the right side door. So there's that. And then we actually see, as Nick's camera turns, we see that Katrina's in the back of the room now. Actually, she was next to him, because he took, you can see in the beginning of his clip, he takes a step or so forward, but Katrina was standing next to him now, instead of by the doorways. So everyone's in a different space, and it just doesn't line up. So to me, this says that this was done at least in 2 takes, and that it wasn't just a crazy quick experience, that they probably, this is my take on it, that they probably heard the rattle of the window, and then they continued filming, and then at one point, someone's like, hey, you know what we could do? What? We could probably spin that window rattling thing into, the house shook. You mean, like we could say, the house was picked up and then dropped? Something like that? Exactly. Nice. And then we could blame it on the holy water. Right. And then that would play into the whole demon thing, right? That's beautiful. I know. YouTubers love that kind of shit. It might have gone something like that, but it probably, the dialogue was probably different. So despite all these other reasons that the window could make a noise, that we don't see any visual evidence that the house was picked up and dropped, and that the cameraman seems to teleport between takes, this is a testable claim. Because they said a holy water or the blessed object caused a reaction. So we can do this. So let's try it. Let's start with a flashback scene, and then we'll go into a test. So I'm here stopping at St. Gregory the Great Church. It's a Catholic church, to fill up my holy water bottles. And they said it should be open, and I can just walk in and get it. So great. Here we go. So here we are. This is the container with the holy water, so I can fill up my things. Alright, so doing an experiment because we saw on a TV show, which I either put a clip in earlier or oh shit, the light went out. Oh my god, no, the battery's dead. Make sure the camera's still going. Alright. So yeah, one of the TV shows, the ghost hunting TV shows, they took holy water and they threw it onto the door and this door, and apparently after they threw it on this wall somewhere, the house shook. So we're going to try it here. So here we go. I'm going to splash you.
What if I burn?
Ready? Here we go.
Jesus.
The power of Christ compels you!
That's some force.
Shut up. Alright. Any shaking? I don't feel any?
I'm shaking.
Nothing? Don't feel anything?
You have to believe in it, Kenny. That's the problem. You have to have faith in it, that it works.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
What church did you go to for that holy water?
It was a Catholic church, St. Gregory the Great, I believe. I have it on the clip.
As long as it wasn't like a Bishop Long church or something.
No.
That's not making it any.
Sorry.
Joseph, don't make enemies. Too late. You're here with me. All right. I mean, I don't. All right. Next experiment. I'm done. All right, so as you can see, the test did not yield any positive results. The house was not picked up and dropped. The house did not shake. We didn't like freak out or anything like that. And I threw the holy water all over the place, like the walls, the doors, the floor, even on Jeff, who did not burst into flames. I was disappointed in that part. But we tried, and you know, I think this claim is put to rest. I don't think there's anything to it. I think it was a lot of overacting, a little drama, and creative editing, mixed with maybe a natural event. So I want to point out that there is a railroad track about 2,150 some feet away, and you can see it on the picture here on the screen, where the train comes through quite often. And I mean, so often that it was waking me up the 2 nights that we stayed there. Every couple hours, you would hear the train whistle or horn. I mean, it was loud. It was really loud. In certain places in the house, you could feel the rumbling. So you heard the whistle, we waited for it, and then, especially upstairs, there was a bedroom upstairs where we could feel the floor shake. So that might be a very plausible reason for what happened. So in that TV show clip, the window rattling might have been caused by that. We don't know. Maybe they edited out the train whistle, or they just didn't hear it. I don't recall hearing the train whistle when we were in that part of the house, in the blue room. So it might have happened, but we just weren't there to witness it ourselves. And the security camera that I have is a DVR camera. It doesn't have audio, so I couldn't track that. So it's something to think about for the next time. Maybe if I get out there again, I'll keep a regular video camera there and make sure when I hear the train whistle, I'll run down and see if the window shakes. But I think we're done with this. We're going to go on to some other things and check out some other smaller claims and see if we can wrap this up soon.
Here's the infamous door that likes to...
The close by itself.
Yep.
That's nice. Damn, that's smooth. What happens if we just... All right, so it does tend to fall. Okay.
Right.
So it's falling towards closing.
Right. Now, sometimes it'll slam. Like, I've heard it slam.
Okay.
I've never seen it, is what I'm, wanting to say. I've never seen it slam shut. I've never seen it shut. It just, we're gone, and then...
Okay.
But it's all the way. It's completely shut.
Right. All right, little duct tape, that'll fix that. All right, this is just a cubby hole. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, no, there was a doorway entry right there.
All right, so is this... Wait. Whoa, okay. There was a doorway there?
Yep, there was.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
All
there
right.
was. And you have the windows here. You can see.
Covered up. Okay. So what's behind here? Oh, there is the door.
Yeah, it goes up a little
Oh, all right. There it is, right to the side. Okay. So the reason I'm touching on this is because Joe, who is the gentleman that's describing the door and all the problems with it, he's had experiences in the past, on past visits, where he's shown up, they've been upstairs, him and his fiance and other people, and they've heard a door slam, and they believe it's an interior door. So we talked about this later, where I didn't film so much, but basically they hear and feel the door slam. And they've never been able to witness it. They've never had a video camera set up or been down there when the door has slammed on its own. It's happened just very, very rare when it's happened. The reason I wanted to touch on this and also show you the parts where there's windows and a door that's covered up is because air pressure is the most likely cause of this experience. Basically, when you have air coming in, and that door that I show you, the door that's hidden behind the curtain, there were gaps in there, and there was air coming in. I could feel the air coming in. The windows that are, they have plastic on them and a curtain over it, but it's not sealed. So there's still air coming through there too. So when you have some winds outside, high winds, or even moderate winds, it's bringing more air into that little space there through those windows and that door. And it's creating a positive pressure. It needs to equalize because air pressure needs to equalize. So what's happening is that air pressure that's built up in that room wants to spread out in the other rooms. And one of the ways to spread out, to equalize, is to go down that hallway through that door that allegedly slams on its own and into the kitchen area. So because that door opens into that hallway towards the covered up door and covered up windows, all the air pressure, all that air inside that room, the entire volume is going to work on that door. So if it's kind of closed, like not, like if it's the wall here and the door opens this way and it's this way, the air pressure is actually going to push it against the wall. But if the door is open slightly enough that air can get behind it, it's going to act on the back of the door, and it's going to push it, and it's going to slam it shut. And I'm sure most of us have realized that or experienced that in our own homes when it's nice out, like in the spring, and we have windows open, or one window open, and then all of a sudden we hear a bedroom door slam because they're a lighter construction. It's not a heavy front door or heavy back door. It's a lighter interior door, and it's easy to move with air pressure like that. And I've heard it for years. I mean, because that's just a normal part of life when it's spring or fall, when it's nice out and you want some fresh air. So that's why I want to touch on that, because that is an experience that I've heard other people say, and I wanted to touch on it because it's a claim. And I think this is the most likely cause of that experience. So we're going to move on.
Go to the basement next?
Sure.
Alright, so now
That's the
that's the crawl space.
small animal.
So you go in to the right, and then you go left, and it'll go all the way back. And then there is a small opening where you can see the inside of the actual crawl space.
Okay. You look in there too?
It's going to be hard to get a shot of that, to be quite honest.
So why am I bothering with this crawl space and the alleged bones in there? It's part of the story and the lore of the house. So in September of 2016, Eddie, the owner of the house, was having some work done in the house, in that crawl space down there in the basement. And some of the workers found a few things. And I'll let Eddie show you.
This is the crawl space right here, the entrance to it. And when the workers were in there, they found some unusual items. These were stuffed way back. Oh, weird. I thought this was the strangest one of all.
What?
Yeah.
That's a piece of somebody's hair.
That's totally ritual. That has to be ritual.
You think so?
I mean, it's jewelry wrapped in hair, wrapped in cloth, wrapped in a plastic bag, buried in someone's basement. I mean, you just don't do that for fun.
I am not getting into the necklace thing because the whole idea that it's a ritual, they spent a long time in the episode on that and trying to promote this narrative of it's a ritual and there was somebody that was harmed that used this and bad things happened to them with psychic powers and seeing everything. And honestly, it was very silly and I don't want to devote any more time to it than I have to. What I want to point out is that the bones that you saw there briefly which they don't really go into a lot, but it is a catalyst for them to go into the crawl space, crawl around, and look for other things and have weird experiences, and you'll see that. But basically, the bones were chicken bones. So after they were found, Eddie did call the police. There is a police report, and I'll put it up here, where he called in. He basically just told them that he had found some chicken bones and an old shirt under the house and just wanted the officers to know. That's it. And that's what's on the report. And this is the only report that the police have. And I know this because I went to the police station and I spoke with the officers, and this is literally the only report that they have on the house in association with any kind of bones. And that makes this next clip interesting.
Well, last time we were here, I had this very profound experience when I went in there.
Something just grabbed my back. What do you want from me? There's my feet.
Now, when we left this location, we were telling you, research this more. Something is down here. You called the police department. Police official came here, took a report.
The first officer that came in, the way I think they viewed it, there's no missing person, there's not a known crime, so he let it go at that. But what he's seen, he said, was old, and he just made a comment about don't do any more digging, you know, or just leave it alone.
So it's pretty interesting that the owner claims that the police were out again, and Nick makes mention that there was a report made, but there wasn't. Again, I went to the police station, and all they had was the one report. They didn't have anything followed up, so I don't think a report was actually filed. I do have a call in to Eddie, the owner, so I'm waiting for a call back, and if he does call me back, I will, insert an update into this, but until then, I don't think there was any report actually made. So the reason they would have called the police again was that they did more work in the basement in that crawl space, and apparently they came across what they believed were human remains. They came across part of a humerus, and then also part of a skull. So that prompted him to call the police again. So I gotta say that I find it kind of sketchy that he was told not to dig anymore, and there was no other report filed, because, if you find remains on your property, then you're supposed to stop. If you're digging around, renovating your house or something like that, and you find remains, you're supposed to stop. And according to Indiana state law, any discovery of human remains or possible human remains should be left undisturbed and reported to the county coroner, the Department of Natural Resources Division of Law Enforcement, and the Department of Natural Resources Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology as soon as possible. And in most cases where I found this, the law and the code, it says within 2 business days you're supposed to report it. What's even stranger is that after all of this, instead of keeping it quiet, they suit up and they go back into the crawl space and they film themselves finding all the bones, which eventually goes out on national television as for the whole world to know that they uncovered human remains instead of, just keeping quiet and not digging anymore. Like, they didn't dig anymore. They had little paintbrushes and stuff like that, brushing it off like they're archaeologists or something. But, if you're supposed to keep it quiet, shut up. But keep it quiet, they did not. So 2 years later, they go back to the house and they do another episode. And they double down on this story about human remains being there and possibly bodies in the basement. But then they expand it into there's possibly bodies out in the backyard. So the reason they might be building on this narrative, besides the fact that it's spooky and it makes for good paranormal TV, the owner is under the impression that there was a cemetery in the plot. So he claims that there was a church that was across the street and that he believed that the cemetery was on the plot where the Monroe house is now. And watch this clip. This is him explaining this actually to me when I was visiting.
Because there used to be a church across the street, and they said this was the cemetery. And then
That's something when I talked to the Historical Society, they said no, that it was not, there was no record of a cemetery being over here.
That's good.
So in order to confirm what church was across the street, because there is no church across the street right now, and also if there were cemeteries on that plot where the Monroe house was, I did reach out to the Blackford County Historical Society. Time to do a little research. Let's go see what we can find. And talked to a woman named Michelle Reisinger, and she was very nice, very helpful, and just an all-around awesome person. And she was able to dig through the records and find out that no, there were no cemeteries on that land where the Monroe house is. There were only 3 cemeteries in town, and they had been moved decades ago, so gone, and they were nowhere near the Monroe house. The church that was across the street was actually a temporary church. So basically, it was the first Presbyterian church that was built in 1868. However, in 1892, the congregation decided that they wanted to build another church. So they moved the frame church that was on the corner of West Franklin and High Street, and they moved it back a block onto Jefferson, which would put it directly across the street from the Monroe house. That building was only there from 1892 to 1893, and then it was taken down. And at no time did it have a cemetery attached to it, whether from its original location or the temporary location across the street from the house. So obviously the owner didn't know about this, and the ghost hunters there for this TV show that we're kind of picking apart here, they didn't know about this, but they're still going with their own narrative that there are bodies somewhere around there because that's, spooky. So they call in the services of Bob Perry, who is a ground penetrating radar expert. He's the owner of Topographics LLC, which is a cemetery mapping and ground penetrating radar company. He's written a book on his methods and techniques, and he teaches people across the country on how to scan cemeteries and look for lost graves or possible graves. So they call him in to scan the backyard. Hey there, this is Future Kenny. Or is it More Future Kenny? I don't know. So originally I had a segment in here where it was a couple clips from that TV show, Paranormal Lockdown, and going through Bob Perry visiting and doing his ground penetrating radar and his results and the interpretation of those results by the hosts of the show. And I also provided my own commentary on that and what I thought of their results and everything like that. But since then, I got in touch with Bob Perry, and we talked on the phone, and a week later, we set up an on-camera interview. So he will be telling you himself what he does, how he does it, and then some information about the TV show clips, which we will play during the interview so you can see what we're talking about, and his reaction to them, and if there was information missing from it. So let's go. First and foremost, thank you, Bob, for agreeing to be interviewed. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me.
And can you introduce yourself for the people that don't know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, as he said, my name is Bob Perry, and I specialize in cemetery geophysics. What that is that cemetery geophysics requires me to be able to not only map a cemetery, but also use ground penetrating radar to locate graves, historical burial sites, and it could be pipes in the ground. It could be, vaults in the ground. It could be anything. But my specialty is locating graves, and I kind of the 1800 time period is my specialty.
So, can you briefly explain, give us a crash course on what ground penetrating radar is, how it works?
Sure. Yeah. GPR, ground penetrating radar, also known as GPR, is subsurface imaging. It's non-invasive. So what you're doing is basically you're scanning across the ground. The equipment I use has a 400 megahertz antenna, and I typically will set the GPR depth and scanning to about 24 scans per foot, and then at a depth of 10 feet. Because most of the graves I find, and no matter where I'm in the country, I find they're all within the 10-foot level. I can go down to 20 feet. But what happens with radar is that when the radar goes into the ground, the deeper it goes, it disperses.
Okay.
You see, so what I'm looking for now, to give you an idea of what happened, let's assume that you are in a cemetery and you are in front of a headstone. What I do is I'll scan perpendicular to the headstone. So if the headstone is here, I'm coming across it this way in a perpendicular angle. Okay. I have it set up for, like I said, 24 scans a foot at 10 feet deep. So as you're going across the ground, you got a vault that's in the ground, or casket, where it may be. When it's in the ground, when it comes across the ground, it hits the bottom of the vault, comes up the top, and then back down the other side. And what you see on the computer screen is an inverted U shape. Now, I can color code this. I can determine different anomalies. We call this an anomaly. Different anomalies give off different signals. And what you have with these signals are a lot of things that have something to do with the radar being received. You could have interference from radio waves, cars passing by, trains going by you. Sirens is a big problem, because it actually interferes with the radar. The radar is like anything else; it just interferes with it. Okay. So, anyways, what happens is that when you get interference, it kind of makes everything scrubbly. Like this here on the computer screen, because what you're looking at is a curve on the computer screen on one side, and then you're looking for anomalies. Now, the way it tracks is that when I'm looking at the computer screen, at the top of the screen, we have the distance that we're traveling across the ground. And then on the left side of the screen, you have the depth. So if I come across an anomaly, and I can tell it's an anomaly, it could be a pipe in the ground. And a pipe in the ground would have a very distinct curve. Rebar, that in a bridge, would have paints like this here, showing because they're very small. If you get the paints like this,
right,
here.
Right,
and you get rebar in the ground. Septic systems you get a bigger curve. Okay, like if it was a mass burial site, you see I refer to it as scrambled eggs. So if you took a plate of scrambled eggs and put them and looked at all the different configurations, the way the angles are of the eggs itself, that's what a mass burial site would look like.
Okay,
it's similar to that. I use scrambled eggs as an analogy.
Right.
So what happens is that we have the ground is like rings on a tree. Okay. Every year we have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of soil that comes down and travels out, whether it's grass, leaves, or whatever it may be. Now, when that soil is disturbed, when you're looking at the computer screen, you see all these nice wavy lines going across the screen. But when when this ground is disturbed, you're going to see to me, it's like you're taking finger paint and washing it like this here. Okay, because you're not getting that scribbly lines, but you're getting like a blur of material. So that tells me the soil has been disturbed. It was dug up.
Okay, like it's mixed up. Yeah,
it's mixed up. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can also, if it's just dig marks, somebody just dug the ground and put a vault or a grave or a body in the ground, you can see the dig marks. You see little stripes going down like this, and like stripes going down, and then just in the middle of that location, you're going to see the anomaly, which is like an inverted U shape. Okay. Now, if it's a collapsed grave, meaning is that up here in New England, again, 16, 17, early 1800s, there's no graves. There's basically wooden boxes that have collapsed, rotted away, and they collapse down about 2 or 3 inches. That's it on the ground. So when you're looking at the computer screen, I realize sometimes when I'm scanning across the ground, I can tell, especially in grassy areas, I can tell if there's a dip in the ground because the grass is typically greener and thicker in the hollow. Okay. Thicker in the hollow as it gets to it. And not only that, but as I'm pushing the cart, if I don't recognize it, I feel the cart kind of get down into the gully and come back up. Okay. And that's basically what GPR does. It just measures soil disturbance.
Okay. And when it comes to accuracy, can you tell looking at the screen exactly what is in the ground?
No, you can't.
Okay.
All you see is an anomaly that's in the ground. It could be anything. A good example of this, I think I mentioned this to you one time. There was a company that went to a local area and they did some scanning and they discovered two unmarked graves. Well, I scanned the area after they did. I came in about 5 years later. They contacted me, and there was nothing in that particular area. And a lot of these companies will do that. They'll say, well, we got a grave here, we got a grave there, or whatever it may be. And I found nothing. However, I did find 2 anomalies that I would have bet were graves. And then we excavated both sites. One turned out to be a 55-gallon drum, and the other turned out to be a 24-inch drain line that you break up and bury that they buried in the ground because they put a roadway there.
Okay.
So they look just like graves, and they look exactly like graves.
So do you think that in some of these cases, because it's a cemetery or because someone contacts you specifically looking for a grave, that's your specialty? So when you come across an anomaly, it's, I guess, assumed by the owners that, oh, it's a grave. It's got to be a grave because that's what we're looking for. Is that accurate?
No, well, yeah, from the perspective of the owner.
Right. All right.
I mean,
Okay.
sometimes they get called in because somebody found a headstone in their backyard.
Okay.
So what happened basically was that there's no grave back there. Even though I have a headstone, they probably replaced the headstone at the cemetery and then took the headstone and put it in the backyard.
Right.
Put it in the backyard. But
Okay.
no, they all think that well, we got a grave here, whatever it may be, and so that's why I come in. I come in and I debunk it. Either I say it's a high probability of a grave, or I say it's nothing or a low probability. And everything that's in the ground has a signature that you have to look at, and you have to be able to decipher the signature from, say, buried rocks, pipes in the ground. It could be roots going in the ground. It could be animal burrows that dug holes in the ground. So there's all sorts of things you have to be. That's a signature that you're looking at. So these signatures have to be. You have to be able to decipher the signature.
Okay.
That you're looking at. So that's what it kind of liquid. So, like, to answer your question, yeah, I get a lot of calls from they say we got a grave in the backyard, and we want you to come out and check it out, and whatever it may be. So.
Right. I asked that question because in the context of why I reached out originally was because the various TV shows and investigations that have been done at the place called the Monroe house, and watching the episode that we're going to look at in a minute here, they were convinced that there was a body that was buried in the basement and possibly more. There was a narrative that was building throughout the show.
Right.
And then it got to a point where they were, at least for me, I felt that they already believed that there were bodies out in the backyard or around the grounds. And then they reached out to you.
Right.
And then you come in. So I'm going to play 2 clips. I have one queued up already. So I'll put it on screen. We can watch it. And then I'd like your commentary on what might have been added or deleted or cut from it. So here we go.
I think that's our best bet right now because our hands are tied legally.
Let's get back inside. Let's get all our equipment packed up. I'm gonna make some phone calls.
That little scene, by the way, was done
Not
before,
bad guy. How are you doing, sir?
Good.
after I left.
What was that?
That scene where they're outside in the dark, that was
Yes.
done about 2 days after I left the site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I did not know that. So
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Good. Thanks for coming out here last minute and taking my phone call. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
well,
it.
I heard about the project, and I said I've got really excited about doing this.
Yeah,
That
we
was
need your
pretty
help.
good.
Bob Perry is a ground penetrating radar technician, and he's one of the best in the world. If there's any bodies buried on this property, he's gonna find them.
Using his ground-penetrating radar, Bob sees an anomaly that he thinks might be the sign of a buried body. He takes more detailed readings to get a 3D picture of what's beneath us in the yard.
All right, Bob, so what are we looking at now on the computer?
This is a 3D image of the area that we just scanned on the outside. This anomaly that you see here is pretty classic as to what you would look for. This would be a collapsed coffin. Realistically, I'd probably say it's probably in the 70 to 100-year-old range.
So that was the clip. They go on to relate that it's probably ghosts.
That first part there, that was a mistake on my part. It never should have been called a coffin, which I happened to mention at that particular time.
Okay.
It had to be a coffin. But basically, what happened was that they in the earlier episode, I was in episode 5, I think it was, in their episode 4 or 3, whatever it may be, they actually found bones under the not in the basement, but on the outside under the porch.
Oh, okay.
They actually crawled under the porch and they actually found bones right there. So there's an assumption there that that could be a grave. It could be a grave out in that particular area.
Right.
But like I said, you don't know if it's a grave unless you dig it up.
All right, I'm going to play the next clip for you. Let me get it set up. Here we go.
We take Eddie outside to discuss our discovery made with the ground penetrating radar sweep.
Basically, what he told us is that he can say with like 95% accuracy, this would be a grave. That this is there's absolutely something buried here.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think she was probably relating to the earlier part where I said that it looks like a coffin. It could be a coffin, that sort of thing. I did not say with the accuracy of 95% because I don't do that because it's either it's either a high probability or a low probability. In this case here, it was a high probability. That there was something buried in the ground right there. Whether it's a coffin or a body, I could not say. So I did not say, that it was 95% accuracy. The fact is that they got a grave there. But like I said, she may have been referring to the previous part where I was talking about the grave, where I made that comment that there was a possible grave, possible body, a casket, whatever it was. I said that at the time. So.
Right. Unfortunately, I think a lot of these shows sensationalized such statements, and they take your statement of this could be a coffin as absolute proof. Not that it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I've been with Nick on a number of different programs, and he gets mad at me sometimes because but gets upset with me because I call it a high probability of a grave, a high probability, and of a burial. A lot of times I don't say graves because when you say grave, it refers to a human body or an animal or something that's buried in that particular area. So I use the term burial because it could be a horse, it could be a pipe, it could be a lot of different things, sometimes when I relate things, based on my experience, I probably could have been referring to the fact that in my experience, this appears to be, a coffin, that sort of thing, because it did have the, not a coffin, but it did have a burial, it did have the distinctness of a grave. But again, there was no anomaly that I could see that was like an inverted U shape, meaning that it was probably in a box or something like that. In that case, something was dug up there and buried in the ground. There's definitely something was dug up and buried in the ground there. So it's, and it wasn't just disturbed soil, because you can see that if it's just disturbed soil, because when you look at the computer screen, you can see the disturbed soil, but if you don't see an anomaly within that disturbed soil, it's only disturbed soil, where they probably dug it up and then they probably filled it back in. In this case here, there was, it could have been lumber. It could have been lumber that was dug up and buried in the ground, or it could have been a large tree root, a tree root or a stump that was buried in the ground. Those are the things that you have to kind of, look out for when you're looking for this type of stuff.
Okay. So that concludes the interview part of this video. Obviously, it's been edited for time because otherwise, the video itself was about 40 minutes long. So obviously too long to come into this video. But the full video will be posted later on YouTube so that everyone can watch the entire thing, because he has a lot more information, more examples, and an extension of what was said here. So let's move on. We got another claim to go through, and then my final conclusions. So let's get to it and wrap it up. So one of the main claims at this house is that people hear voices in the basement. They set up EVP sessions with their digital recorders, and they ask questions and hope the spirits talk back to them. And they usually hear these voices that are very low and sometimes muffled. When I went down there, I found this hole that went out to the outside, and we decided to do a little experiment with Jeff.
Kenny has found a hole in the basement, and he's suspecting that maybe some of the voices that people hear are coming from the neighbors through that hole in the basement. I just wanted to film my end so you guys can hear how loud I'm talking. I should. A couple times. Can you hear that? So that's about as loud as I want to get.
Jeff.
Just facing the back yard where a lot of those noises were coming from. So this experiment was actually kind of fun. I really enjoyed this one because I was not sure how much sound would come through. And yes, I did enhance the audio, but I was hearing it much better than what the audio recorder was picking up. In standard ghost hunting practice, when people think that they get alleged EVPs, they usually enhance it anyway. They usually enhance it so that it's louder. They raise the volume, they bump it up, they amplify it so that you can hear more of what's going on. So I did the same thing, showing, yeah, you can pick up voices. And Jeff he's about 50 feet back from that opening, that hole that goes into the basement wall. So, and if you look at this other picture, you can see that the sidewalk that runs alongside the house is less than that. It's about 28 feet from that hole. Also, look back beyond where Jeff was standing. You can see that there's a backyard of another house. So there's plenty of chances for other people to be in that backyard and having conversations and having fun, being loud, and the voices carrying into that through that hole and being funneled into the basement. And if somebody's down there, if a bunch of people are down there, ghost hunters are doing their EVP sessions with their audio recorders, they're going to pick up some noises. So I think this one was really good, just to show that you can pick up noises from inside. And Jeff couldn't hear me. So when in the beginning of that clip, when I'm going, Jeff, he couldn't hear me. So it's not a two-way conversation. It's not like you could just yell out and say, hey, stop making noise, because they just simply too far away and not enough sound was carrying from the basement. So I think this was fun, and it shows that there is a logical explanation for hearing some voices in that basement. All right, so final thoughts on this. Is it haunted? I don't think so. I mean, I don't see anything that would convince me that the place is haunted. There's a lot of things going on here. There's priming, because you have a lot of stories about the place already. You have stories coming from the owner, and then from all of these YouTube channels that go in there that aren't exactly scientific or skeptical or critical thinking. They're in there for entertainment and to produce videos that gets clicks and likes and generate revenue for their monetized channel. So I really don't trust them too much. You have contextual cues. The place is not well furnished. And I'm not saying that that's not a slight on the owner or anything like that. There's just not a lot of furniture in there. So you have hardwood floors, you have a lot of echoing going on, you have all this confusing floor plan thing going on, because sometimes you get turned around. When I first got there, I was turned around a lot. Like, where am I? Where is this room compared to this room? Because the floor plan is just chaotic and has changed over the years. Because in the episodes that you saw from Paranormal Lockdown, the floor plan is different from when they were there and I was there. So doors are not where they're supposed to be anymore, or there's a new room or something like that. We have a lot of not investigating weird stuff. When groups go there, when ghost hunters go there and they hear a noise, many of them don't get up and go look to see what caused the noise. They sit in the room or where they were and they just let it happen, and they get excited and they blame the ghosts because reasons. You have assumptions and speculation, where people that already believe in the paranormal and already believe that the place is haunted because they've watched so many videos and they're completely convinced that it's haunted. They go in there and they make assumptions that some noise that they heard down the hallway is a ghost, that a shadow or a light that they saw out of the corner of their eye was a ghost, because they're convinced already that it is haunted and everything will be attributed to ghosts and spirits or a demon. You have the willingness to believe rather than understand. We see this a lot with ghost hunters. They go in there and they want to believe, and they want to believe so bad that they're convinced from the start they're going to find evidence. They don't even go through the process of collecting data and trying to determine if it's evidence. They already are convinced going in. And that kind of assumption, that kind of speculation makes you extremely biased when you go into houses like this. And then, of course, we have the TV shows making up shit. You know, when you go in and misrepresent professionals that come in, the information that they give you in order to turn it to your narrative to make it seem like it's spooky and back up what you say or what you believe. That's just downright disrespectful and dishonest to your viewers. But all of this combines into a reputation, and a reputation that generates income because people love going to haunted houses. And when I asked the owner, when I was there, talking about like what's his plans, what's the end game, and he told me. So what's your, if you don't mind me asking, what's your intention with the house?
The original intentions?
Your intentions now. Like I believe your original one was to flip it.
Yes, that was the beginning. That's what I do, or to rent it out.
Okay.
Fix it up, rent it out. But after the stories from the neighbors at the time, I realized that boy, it was awful strong. The stigma is really strong, so I shut it down for quite a few years. You know, let it calm down. Everybody forget about it.
Okay.
Because you know, you got to put 30, 50 grand into a place and you can't rent it out.
Yeah.
It's a little scary, and so I shut it down for a little bit. But right now, long story short, my wife wants to keep it.
Okay.
So I'm into science, museums, so I'm going to slowly do a few rooms, not the entire house, which I intended on, but make it a museum about the paranormal. You know, try to find the actual, what people think are artifacts, you know, books, stuff like that, so they can come up with their own conclusions on what they think.
Okay.
You know, the history of poltergeist, where did that originate from, dedicate a room to it, that kind of stuff.
I mean, he's basically turning into a tourist attraction, and that's kind of. I mean, I don't agree with it because I think it's just exploiting something that doesn't exist. But that's me. You know, I'm not the owner of the house, and sadly, he can do whatever he wants. But bottom line, do I think it's haunted? No. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a like and like, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I know this was long, but I hope you got a lot of good information from it, or at least that you like the techniques, the deep dive into research and fact-checking everything, because that's what we need to do in this. When we investigate these mysteries, these haunted houses or monsters or UFOs or religious mysteries or whatever, we need to fact-check everything. That's the only way we're going to get to the truth. That's it. See ya.
Thank you.